Why has your home become so expensive? The answer cannot be explained by supply and demand alone. Monetary policy, tax structures, land use regulations. These policies have driven both demand and supply, pushing prices higher. In the 1990s, a median American household needed roughly 3 times their annual income to purchase a home. Today, in major metropolitan areas, it's not uncommon for that ratio to exceed 10 times. Even the national average has climbed to roughly 5 to 6 times, according to a 2024 report from Harvard University's Joint Center for Housing Studies. Why did this happen? This slide explains it all. From late 2008 through late 2015, and again from 2020 to 2021, the Federal Reserve held its policy rate near zero. Low interest rates expanded borrowing capacity, and investors flooded the market. Some estimates suggest that at certain points, investment-driven purchases accounted for as much as 20 to 30% of all transactions. Meanwhile, zoning regulations choked off supply. Estimates from various institutions suggest the United States has accumulated a housing shortage in the millions of units. Foreign buyers accelerated prices in specific cities, prompting regulatory responses in Canada, Australia, and the United States. This is a pattern that decades of empirical housing research have consistently documented. This is not speculation. This is data-driven analysis. And this is understandable. The numbers make it clear. Trace the history of policy, and it becomes clear. With this, you can understand the mechanisms behind the surge in housing prices. Today, let's look at the data. In 2008, the collapse of Lehman Brothers shook the world. The Federal Reserve's prescription was to cut interest rates. The goal, stimulate the economy. But looking precisely at the Fed's policy rate over time, the near-zero environment did not cover the entire period. From late 2008 through late 2015, and again from 2020 to 2021, the rate was held near zero. Between 2016 and 2018, the Fed entered a gradual tightening cycle, with rates temporarily climbing into the 2% range. And these low-rate periods produced unintended consequences in the housing market. As Consumer Financial Protection Bureau data shows, falling interest rates dramatically increase how much a borrower can take on, even with the same monthly payment. Take a 30-year fixed mortgage. A household that could afford a $300,000 home at 5% interest would be qualified by the bank for a home worth $450,000 or more at 2%. Suddenly, buyers with dramatically greater purchasing power flooded the market. What does a seller do? When inventory is thin and supply cannot increase quickly, upward pressure on prices follows. This liquidity kept supplying sustained fuel to the housing market. Home prices rose far faster than income growth in the real economy. You're probably thinking this right now. Isn't low interest rates a good thing for borrowers? In the short term, yes. But when those low rates drive up prices themselves, affordability eventually collapses. Pay close attention to what happened after 2022. The Fed raised rates aggressively, and mortgage rates climbed to around 7% by 2023. Demand cooled. But prices did not fall significantly. Why? The lock-in effect. Existing homeowners who had locked in low-rate mortgages were reluctant to sell in a high-rate environment. Sell the house, and the next home comes with a 7% mortgage. The result, available inventory dried up even further, and certain markets became structurally resistant to price declines. Even after the era of zero rates ended, its legacy continues to constrain the market. Here is a fact that tends to get overlooked. Around 2022, some estimates placed investment-driven buyers at roughly 28 to 30% of all housing transactions. That is a figure tracked quarterly by multiple data providers, including Redfin. It's worth noting, however, that this ratio varies significantly by definition, geography, and time period. Since 2012, large funds like Blackstone and smaller individual investors alike have aggressively acquired single-family homes, converting them to rentals and expanding the SFR market. As a 2023 report from the Government Accountability Office notes, the share of single-family homes held by institutional investors varies considerably by region. But the concentration of their purchases in specific metropolitan areas has measurably influenced price formation in those markets. Individual investors follow the same logic. Tax advantages and appreciation expectations drive them to buy a second property, then a third. Not as a place to live, but as a line item in a portfolio. Why can investors outbid everyone else? As long as yield justifies the cost of capital, there are conditions under which they can bid higher. People who actually need a place to live are forced to compete against that logic. And here is a critical perspective. Since 2022, rising rates have eroded the investment case. The pace of new investor purchases has trended down from its peak. But does that solve the problem? It does not. As long as investors hold on to what they own, those homes do not return to the market. The flow, new purchases, has declined, but the stock, existing holdings, continues to occupy the market. Housing has become a speculative asset class. And once a market makes that shift, it does not easily reverse. If demand increases, increase supply. That's what the economics textbook says. But in the housing market, that mechanism breaks down. The reason? Zoning regulations. In much of the United States, single-use zoning is written into law. Residential zones are for residences only. Apartments, prohibited. High-density development, prohibited. Minimum lot size requirements block efficient land use. Securing development permits can take years. Environmental impact assessments, community consent processes, administrative reviews. Each of these costs gets baked into the price of a new home. And then there is NIMBYISM. Not in my backyard. Don't build it near me. Existing homeowners worry that nearby development could affect their property values. Through ballot measures and protests to local government, they block new construction. What has been the result? Freddie Mac, the National Association of Realtors, Moody's, and others have all attempted to quantify America's housing shortage. Estimates range widely, from 1.5 million to 5.5 million units, with roughly 4 million frequently cited as a middle reference point. Understand, though, that this is not an annual shortfall. It is a cumulative deficit built up over many years. This is not a market failure. It is a policy failure. As housing economists like Glazer and Yorko have consistently shown in research since the 2000s, land use regulations reduce supply elasticity and create a structural environment that drives prices higher. Let's talk about Vancouver. In the 2010s, this city saw housing prices surge dramatically over the span of just a few years. One contributing factor, an influx of foreign capital. Wealthy buyers purchased North American real estate as an offshore asset. No need to live there. The goal was capital gains and wealth preservation. But here, we need to be precise. As OECD and IMF analyses show, the price impact of foreign purchases tends to be significant in specific markets, but limited at the national average level. Conflating national trends with metropolitan dynamics leads to a misdiagnosis of the problem. Official statistics published by the British Columbia government show that non-resident involvement in transactions varies substantially by region, year, and definition. Rather than presenting a single definitive figure, look directly at the specific statistics displayed on screen. How have governments responded? In 2023, Canada introduced federal legislation restricting residential property purchases by non-Canadians. Then in February 2024, the government announced an extension of that ban through January 2027. Australia strengthened review processes through its Foreign Investment Review Board. Several U.S. states have introduced laws restricting certain foreign nationals from purchasing farmland and real estate. But here is the irony. By the time these regulations were enacted, prices had already surged. Foreign buying is not the sole cause of housing unaffordability. But in specific metropolitan areas, it functioned as a localized accelerant, layering on top of other factors to push prices higher, faster. We have now examined 4 factors, but what matters most is this: they do not exist in isolation. They reinforce each other. Low interest rates expand borrowing capacity, drawing investors into the market. When investors hold on to properties, those homes do not return to the market. The number of homes available to actual residents becomes structurally constrained. At the same time, zoning regulations block new supply from coming online. Scarcity props up prices and sustains investors, expected returns. Because prices don't fall, the next wave of investors enters. And after 2022, a new layer was added to the system: the lock-in effect. Existing owners who secured low-rate mortgages are reluctant to sell in a high-rate environment. Resale inventory shrinks further, and prices remain sticky. As long as this feedback loop remains intact, prices are structurally inclined to stay elevated. Fix one factor, and the other three continue to prop up prices. That is why the housing crisis resists simple solutions. Raise interest rates, and yes, new investor purchases are suppressed. But the supply shortage remains, and depending on vacancy rates and market conditions, rents may rise. The possibility that residents' financial strain deepens cannot be ruled out. Faced with this structure, what policies do you believe would actually work? Let's take a closer look at what the numbers actually mean. In the 1990s, a median American household needed roughly 3 times their annual income to buy a home. According to a 2024 report from Harvard University's Joint Center for Housing Studies, the national average has now climbed to roughly 5 to 6 times. And in major metropolitan areas like San Francisco, Vancouver, and Los Angeles, that ratio has reached levels exceeding 10 times income. What does this mean? The home your parents believed was within reach with hard work has, in many of today's cities, moved beyond reach regardless of effort. Same effort no longer produces the same outcome. The structure itself has changed. The generational divide shows up in the data as well. A 2023 Redfin analysis of U.S. Census Bureau data found that millennial homeownership rates lag significantly behind where baby boomers stood at the same age. That gap is not a gap in capability. It is a gap created by structural changes in the market. And here is a mechanism that tends to go unseen. The generation that achieved homeownership became beneficiaries of rising prices. Their wealth grew, proceeds from sales-funded retirement. The generation that could not enter the market was excluded from that opportunity. The surge in housing prices is not simply a real estate story. It is a mechanism that locks in and amplifies wealth inequality across generations. Now, let's bring today's analysis together. First, the unintended consequences of low interest rate policy. During the near-zero rate environments from late 2008 through late 2015, and again from 2020 to 2021, the amount households could borrow for a mortgage expanded dramatically. Demand was artificially inflated, providing sustained fuel for rising home prices. And even after the sharp rate hikes that began in 2022, a new dynamic has emerged. Owners who locked in low-rate mortgages are reluctant to sell, draining resale inventory and keeping prices elevated. Second, the transformation of the market by investors. At the peak, some estimates placed investment-driven purchases at roughly 20 to 30% of all transactions. The pace of new investor buying has slowed in a high-rate environment, but as long as investors continue holding, those homes will not return to the market. This is no longer a flow problem. It is a stock problem, and the ownership structure persists. Third, the supply shortage created by policy. Zoning regulations and NIM/BYISM have blocked new development, allowing a cumulative housing deficit in the millions of units to accumulate. As a substantial body of empirical housing research consistently shows, land use regulations reduce supply elasticity and structurally sustain price increases. What your parents acquired for 3 times their annual income now costs more than 10 times income in major cities. Is that a gap in effort or a gap in structure? Solving the housing crisis demands more than identifying a single cause. It requires examining the compounding interplay of low interest rates, investors, regulation, and the lock-in effect simultaneously. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. Housing prices, inflation, geopolitics. Behind the surface-level explanations of world events lie structural mechanisms. This channel analyzes those structures, not with emotion, but with facts, not with opinion, but with data. Subscribe and turn on notifications, and the next analysis will be there to deepen your understanding of the world. Until next time.